Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter. And as always, we are always here to provide you the best Jacksonville Jaguars daily coverage you will find anywhere, just like we've been doing every single day since August 2019. As always, you can find our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground Jaguars coverage when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter. And folks, it was a relatively newsworthy day at Everbank Stadium in the Miller Electric Center on Thursday. And that is all at the same time while saying it was definitely the lightest and least eventful practice of the training camp so far. Day 12, Liam Cohen said after practice that they treated it kind of what he called like a fast Friday. But essentially what a Friday in the season looks like. Friday practices, regular season practices in general aren't exactly, anywhere near as extensive as training camp practices. But Friday practices especially, are particularly, light. Might focus on some specific things, situations, etc. So there were no pads on. A lot of team drill stuff. A lot of situational type things, 4-minute offense, etc. So really wasn't the most eventful day in terms of what you saw on the field. Now you did see once again, Travis Hunter went back and forth between offense and defense. You saw him, start out with the offense, while working with the defensive coaches during special teams periods. Then he'd start out with the offense, end up, rotating, putting his penny on, going to the defense, and then back to the offense. And it is with Travis, where we start the conversation for today. Liam Cohen, confirmed it today that you will see Travis Hunter play both wide receiver and cornerback against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Saturday. Now, it obviously, just like with all of their key players, it remains to be seen completely to this point what exactly Hunter's role will look like in terms of how long he plays. Maybe it's for a series on each side of the ball. Maybe it's a handful of plays. Who knows? Maybe it's a whole quarter, though that absolutely seems doubtful at this point. But regardless, I think Hunter is giving people something, to really be excited for on Saturday, because we've seen Travis Hunter play both ways in practice. We've seen him do it in a scrimmage. We've seen it ramp up extensively over this past week. But we still haven't seen what this looks like in a game setting. The scrimmage, of course, is the closest thing so far, but it still wasn't a game. It wasn't, navigating, going between both units, when, frankly, they need him on both sides. He's one of the most dynamic athletes. So, if anytime he's not on offense, they're going to miss him. And anytime he's not on defense, they're going to miss him. That is the double-edged sword and what is really critical when you're talking about a player like Hunter. So I think overall, Hunter, to me, will probably, play a couple series, maybe on defense. I'm not necessarily even sure with the starting defense. And I think you probably see him with the starters on offense for what I would guess is a series or two. Because I really think it was up in the air for the Jaguars and for head coach Liam Cohen on deciding exactly how they were going to tackle, the preseason in general, but this preseason game specifically. How long do they want their starters to play, and if they wanted their starters to play at all? Because Liam mentioned how the Los Angeles Rams do things when he was asked about starters playing the preseason. And he made it clear that he's, coming from a place where it is very commonplace for the starters to not play in the preseason. And for even the key backups to not play in the preseason. So this is different, I think, from what he knew there. It's not, he mentioned, of course, earlier in the week when talking about, the Los Angeles Rams point that, in Tampa Bay, they actually played, some key guys. It was obviously different than what he did in Los Angeles. So he's seen both realms. But I would have to think, the bulk of his NFL career at this point has been spent with the Rams. This is Cohen but this is, to me, Cohen, showing that he is obviously his own coach and this is their own program. It's not merely what would the Rams do in Jacksonville. I think obviously the Rams' influence is obvious, both on the coaching staff and in the front office. You have James Gladstone. You have several other former Rams. Both on the coaching staff, included with the several that are in the front office that we just mentioned. So it would have made sense if he went the Los Angeles Rams way. But he's not. He's going the Jaguars way. And what they're doing, he said, is everybody's going to play. The starters will play. Now, there wasn't much information disclosed in terms of, what exactly will it look like, how long are they going to play, etc. But I will say, I think the most interesting thing that he said was, the decision to play the guys came in part, obviously I don't think in totality, but in part after a conversation with Senator Robert Hainsey, who was walking by, during his press conference when he was talking about it. And he, just looked at him and goes, that guy, not an exact quote, but that guy, I talked with him, had something to do with it. He said that they talked in the weight room, and Hainsey, he noted, has a pulse on the locker room, as does Trevor Lawrence, who he said he also talked about it with. So to me, Liam Cohen, has said since day one, that they want there to be an open line of communication. This isn't before where I think in Jacksonville there was a lot of the front office and head coach are the bosses of the roster, and the roster answers to them. Whereas obviously the head coach is in charge of the team, but it's supposed to be kind of a back and forth. It's a give and a take. It's a relationship. And I think Liam Cohen, having an open mind and acknowledging that, at the end of the day, these guys are in the locker room. I'm the head coach. They know what the rest of the locker room wants, how they're feeling, etc. So I thought that, it was interesting that he pointed it out, that it came, again, not totally, but partially after conversations with these guys. That, to me, is a good sign of the communication that Cohen has said that he wants to build. Because communication has been a big issue in Jacksonville. I think just the simple act of communicating with one another, from whether that's coaching staff, whether that's front office, whether that's locker room, in between, I think that communication has really been one of the weaknesses of the franchise. And I'm not saying, from like a public standpoint or their leadership, etc. I just think inside their football program dynamic, I don't think there was an open line of communication from the players going up top to that. Because I don't think it was a conversation. I think it was more direction and directive. I also think that, the fact that these are two brand new schemes on offense and defense probably plays a big role in it. If this was next year, I'm not sure you see them play next year. Because a lot of them, other than the rookies, whoever come next year and the new additions, etc., will have had experience in the offense before. But I think that ultimately, I see both sides. I would understand why. Like, I still, even with the new scheme, you don't need to see Josh Hines Allen, Brian Thomas Jr., Trayvon Walker to know what they can do. But it has, to me, made an impact in terms of how fast teams can start. So I see both sides of it. And now we know exactly which way the Jacksonville Jaguars and head coach Liam Cohen are looking at. Thank you guys, as always, for joining the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. We'll meet again next time.